What's going on, everyone? I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. In today's video, we're going to dive into my travel video breakdown, which is the Uzbekistan cinematic travel video. If you haven't checked that out, I'll leave a link down in the description box below, and it's best if you go watch it and then come back and check the travel video breakdown. In this video, I'm going to be going over a few chapters from pre-planning, shot lists, the effects and color grading, as well as the audio and music. There's a lot to unpack in this video, so without further ado, let's jump straight in. First and foremost, and in my opinion, the most important thing that you can do, especially for travel filmmaking, and that is pre-planning or scripting or doing research. Basically, before I even begin planning the video, I begin to plan the trip, to write down where I want to go, how I'm gonna get there, how long am I gonna be there for, what time of the day will I be there in that said location. So as you can see here, I've prepared an itinerary of each day and what I'm gonna visit. So for instance, the first day in Tashkent, which is the city that I'm gonna be in Uzbekistan, first thing I'm gonna go get breakfast, obviously, and then I'm gonna go to Hazrati Imam Mosque and then to Barak Khan Madrasa. And I wanted to visit the bazaar at sunset, but when I got there, I realized that it's an indoor bazaar, indoor market, so there's no point of going there at sunset. That's why I went at noon, so that I can save the sunset and the soft, beautiful golden light for another location. Now, besides the location, I also need to know what I'm gonna shoot there. That's why I make my shot list. I prepare a few ideas that I'd like to implement in my video. I use an app called Notion. I have a template provided by Nicholas Crystal. I'll leave a link down to his video in the description below. In the shot list, my first category is whether it's a normal shot or to grab, as I have written here, or whether it's a reel or transition, just so that I can know whether I want to shoot it in vertically, horizontally, and so on. The next thing is I have a description of the shot. So this is just basically what the shot is going to be. And if I have any notes, for example, here, I want this to be reverse shot, just so that I can keep in mind when filming that specific shot. Then we have the focal length, which could be anything from wide, macro, medium, close-up, a tripod shot, or even the drone shot. And then we have our frames per second. What frames per second do I want to use? Mainly, I just use this on either 24 or 60, sometimes 120, depending if I want to slow it down too much or not. And then the last thing I have is after I film the shot and I get the shot that I want to review it in camera, I just click done to make sure that I don't take the shot again and to know which shots I have remaining. So for example, you can see here in my Kalan Mosque Bukhara, I wanted a 360 hyperlapse roll and to capture the dome inside of the mosque at a wide focal length with 60 frames per second. Another example here is the train pass by shot with a wide focal length and 24 frames per second, so this roughly gives me an idea on how I'm going to connect everything together. Obviously, these are just guidelines and you have to follow them exactly, but it's a very good idea to have a general concept in your brain of your video and of the edit, what your final video would look like, so that you can improvise in the moment and get additional shots, but generally have a coherent concept of your video in your head. Chapter number 2, which is music/audio. And a lot of people underestimate the importance of audio, and keep in mind audio is literally 50% of video, so your music and sound design are just as equally important as your visuals. So I had a dilemma. I was torn between choosing a more documentary style voiceover over my whole video and adding some ambience music with the sound design, or I could go the other route and have a full main soundtrack for my video and work my sound design, and if I want to add a voiceover around that whole track. And ultimately I chose the main soundtrack, and after listening to it a couple of times I realized that there's an intro build up and then there's a heavy drop and then it goes back down into a more relaxed state again. So I wanted my action-packed fast cuts, hyperlapse edits to be in the drop zone, and then after the drop finishes or fades away and then I have a more melodic song, then I would choose the more emotional and more slow motion clips. So as you can see here in the timeline, this is the main song, and then everything here that you see which is green is sound design or my voiceover, basically sound that I've added externally. I know my timeline is not the most organized in the world, but it's easy to see. Basically have the clips right here in the blue layer, and then after I made my voiceover I added the subtitles and slowly started to fill in the visuals according to the song and the voiceover and match them to the song. I started slowly adding the sound design, the transitions, the whooshes, the risers, etc. Chapter number 3, which is my favorite, and that is effects. So I tried to incorporate a lot of hyperlapses in this video, since when I listened to the song there was a drop and it just wouldn't make sense to have a very slow or just a normal shot or a pan shot of the building. I would want something fast, something with a lot of action, a lot of flips, a lot of motion blur to accommodate that fast-paced and high BPM track. So for hyperlapses, I mainly use CC lens and a lot of motion blur since they were very fast, just to keep them smooth and look a bit more realistic. And since most of them had doors in the center of the building, I used the zoom through effect to seamlessly transition between clips. I also have a tutorial for the zoom through effect on my YouTube channel. I'll link it down below in the description. And then it's just a matter of dropping a LUT and warp stabilizer in After Effects to help smoothen things out. I also used a masking effect inside the clay oven where there was a circular fire. Then I created a center mask inside the fire ring and just slowly opened it up to make it a much more seamless instead of a hard cut. Now chapter number 4, which is color grading. And for color grading, we're gonna go back to pre-planning. When I was planning my list on my itinerary to go to Uzbekistan, I've noticed that most of the buildings have a orange/blue architecture, and on top a lot of them have like teal peaks. So I know it's kind of cliche, but I decided to go for an orange teal LUT since that would best fit what I'm filming. In camera, I filmed everything on S-Log3 422 10-bit, overexposed by 1.7 stops, so that I can bring everything back down in post-processing. There was one problem with the weather, and for the duration that I was there, it was very dusty and the sky was very flat. You could barely see the sunshine, which affected a lot of my shots, especially with the buildings, as there was not much contrast. Even at the sunset, you would notice there's a lot of gray skies, and I couldn't really add a lot of contrast in the edit. But then again, it is what it is. It's travel filmmaking after all. For the skin tones, I masked every clip individually and used the vector scope in Premiere Pro to make sure my skin tones are aligned with the line. And then to finish everything off, just added a LUT, some contrast, and I made sure that my timeline is 3040 by 1608, which is a 2:3 aspect ratio, essentially widescreen, which helps a lot in the cinematic aspect of things. And ultimately, I ended the video with a slideshow of my favorite pictures from the trip and just added the desert ambient song to fade away the video. So that was basically it, a travel video breakdown of my edit for the Uzbekistan video. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.